Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny from Into English Podcast. Welcome back to our new episode. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to just wait, like even for a few seconds? You send a message and then you check your phone again and again. You upload a video and then refresh the views. You start something new and after a few days, you already want results. It's almost like we're not really living anymore. We're just waiting for the next thing to happen. And the strange part is, it doesn't even feel like impatience. It feels like urgency. It feels like progress. It feels like we're doing something. But most of the time, we're not. We're just uncomfortable with not being in control. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough. Because we don't actually hate waiting. We hate not knowing what's going to happen. We hate the uncertainty. So today, I want to talk about something that sounds very simple, but quietly affects almost every part of our lives. Patience. Not in a motivational way, not in a just be calm kind of way, but in a very real, practical way. Because once you really understand it, you start to see that patience is not just a personality trait. It's actually a kind of power, a very quiet one, but a very important one. There's a simple story I heard a long time ago, and it stayed with me. A teacher and his student were traveling together, and after a long day, they stopped near a lake to rest. The teacher asked the student to go and bring back some water. So the student walked to the lake. But when he got there, he saw that the water was muddy. Some animals had just walked through it and everything was stirred up. So he came back and said, "I can't bring that water. It's dirty." The teacher said nothing. After a while, he asked him again. The student went back and the water was still muddy. He came back, a bit frustrated this time. And then, after some time, the teacher asked him again. Now the student was annoyed. But he went anyway. And this time, the water was clear. The mud had settled. And what's interesting is, nothing changed except time. The student didn't clean the water. He didn't fix anything. He just waited. And I think that's something we forget. Because when things feel messy in our lives, our first instinct is always to fix them, to do something, to think more, to react, to force clarity. But sometimes, clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing less. It comes from letting things settle. Your thoughts, your emotions, your situations, they're a lot like that lake. If you keep disturbing them, they stay muddy. But if you leave them alone for a while, they start to clear on their own. And the problem is, we don't like that process because it takes time. Impatience is a strange thing. Because it doesn't feel negative. It actually feels very active. When you're impatient, you feel like you're moving forward. You feel like you're trying. You feel like you're doing something productive. But most of the time, it's just a reaction to discomfort. Think about it. You check your phone again, not because something changed, but because you don't like not knowing. You quit something early, not because it won't work, but because you don't see results fast enough. You overthink a decision, not because you need more information, but because you don't feel certain yet. Impatience is not really about time. It's about how we deal with discomfort. We don't like the feeling of uncertainty. We don't like the feeling of not having control. So we try to escape it. We try to speed things up. We try to force outcomes. We try to make things happen faster than they naturally would. But the truth is, a lot of things in life don't respond well to pressure. Relationships, creativity, growth, even understanding yourself. The more you push, the more resistance you create. And sometimes the very thing you're trying to get gets further away because you're trying too hard. That's the hidden cost of impatience. It feels like progress, but it often leads to frustration, and over time, it makes you tired. because you're constantly trying to control things that were never meant to be controlled. And maybe that's why so many people feel stuck, not because they're not doing enough, but because they're not allowing things to unfold. I think part of the reason patience feels so difficult is because the world we live in doesn't reward it anymore. Everything around us is fast. You open your phone, and within seconds, you can see what everyone is doing. You can order food and track it in real time. You can watch anything instantly. You can scroll endlessly without ever reaching the end. And slowly, without even realizing it, your mind starts to adapt to that speed. You begin to expect everything to move just as quickly, not just technology, but life. And that's where things start to break, because real life doesn't work like that. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you start learning something new. Maybe it's English. Maybe it's going to the gym. Maybe it's building a YouTube channel. At the beginning, everything feels exciting. You're motivated. You're consistent. You feel like you're making progress. But after a few days, or maybe a few weeks, something changes. You don't see results yet. Your English still feels awkward. Your body doesn't look different. Your videos don't get views. And suddenly, that excitement turns into doubt. You start asking yourself, is this even working? Am I doing something wrong? Maybe this just isn't for me. And what's interesting is, nothing actually went wrong. The process is still working, but your expectation is out of sync with reality. Because you're expecting fast results from something that naturally takes time. And this doesn't just happen with big goals. It happens in very small, everyday moments. You send a message, and when the other person doesn't reply right away, you check again. Maybe they're just busy, but your mind doesn't go there first. It starts creating stories. Did I say something wrong? Are they ignoring me? Why haven't they replied yet? And within a few minutes, a simple situation turns into unnecessary stress. Not because something happened, but because nothing happened fast enough. And I think that's the real problem. We're not reacting to reality. We're reacting to the gap between what is happening and how fast we think it should happen. And that gap is where impatience lives. We expect clarity immediately. We expect results immediately. We expect answers immediately. But most things in life don't reveal themselves that quickly. They unfold slowly, quietly, often without you noticing. And when you don't understand that, you start to push. You try to speed things up. You try to force progress. You try to control the timing. But the more you do that, the more resistance you create, because some things cannot be rushed. And maybe patience feels so hard today, not because we lack it, but because everything around us has trained us to expect something different. When people hear the word patience, they often think it means doing nothing, just waiting. But patience is not about doing nothing. It's about how you respond when things are not happening yet. And when you start to look at it that way, you realize it gives you something very powerful. Let me describe something very common. You're in a conversation with someone, and they say something that doesn't sit right with you. Maybe it sounds a bit cold. Maybe it feels dismissive. Maybe it triggers something. And in that moment, you feel the urge to respond immediately, to defend yourself, to explain, to react. But if you've ever actually done that, you'd probably know what happens next. The situation escalates because you're not responding from clarity, you're responding from emotion. Now imagine a slightly different version of that same moment. You hear the same words, you feel the same reaction, but instead of replying immediately, you pause. You don't ignore it, you don't suppress it, you just give it time. And after a while, something changes. The intensity fades a little, your thoughts become clearer, and you start to see other possibilities. Maybe they didn't mean it that way. Maybe they were just tired. Maybe you misunderstood the tone, and now when you respond differently, more calmly, more clearly, more intentionally. Same situation, different outcome, and the only difference is time. That's what patience gives you. It gives you space to see things as they are instead of reacting to how they feel in the moment. Because not every thought is accurate, not every emotion is reliable. Sometimes they just need time to settle. There's a kind of tiredness that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from trying too hard, trying to make something happen, trying to figure everything out, trying to control every detail. And you can feel it, that mental tension, that constant effort, like you're pushing against something but it's not moving. Let me give you a simple example. Have you ever tried to come up with an idea but nothing comes? You sit there, you think harder, you try different angles, you push yourself to be creative, but the more you try, the more stuck you feel. And then you stop. Maybe you go for a walk, maybe you do something else. And suddenly, the idea appears out of nowhere, and it feels effortless. And that's the thing. Some processes in life don't respond to force. They respond to space. When you give them room, they move. When you pressure them, they resist. And patience is what allows you to create that space. It allows you to step back, to stop forcing, to stop draining your energy on something that isn't ready yet. And when you do that, things start to feel lighter, more natural, more aligned, because you're no longer fighting the process, you're allowing it. Let me tell you something I think is very important. A lot of people don't fail. They just stop too soon. And the reason they stop is not because they're incapable. It's because they don't see results fast enough. Imagine someone starts going to the gym. The first week, they feel motivated. The second week, still consistent. But after a month, they look in the mirror and nothing really changed. And that's when the doubt begins. Is this even working? Maybe I'm not doing it right. Maybe this just isn't for me. And slowly, they stop. Not because the process failed, but because they expected visible results too early. Now imagine if they just stayed a little longer, another month, another few weeks. That's usually when things start to shift. But most people never reach that point because they leave during the invisible phase, the phase where effort is building but results are not visible yet. And that phase requires patience because there's no reward, no feedback, no confirmation, just trust and consistency. And that's difficult, but that's also where the difference is made. Not in the beginning, but in the part where it feels like nothing is happening. Because that's exactly when most people quit. And if you can stay through that part, if you can keep going without needing immediate results, you put yourself in a completely different position. Because success, in most cases, is not about doing something extraordinary. It's about staying long enough. I think one of the hardest places to practice patience is with other people. Because unlike situations, people are unpredictable. They don't always respond the way you expect. They don't always understand you right away. And sometimes they don't even realize how their actions affect you. And that's where frustration begins. Because without noticing, we all carry a quiet expectation that people should respond the way we would, that they should understand faster, that they should act a certain way. And when they don't, it feels wrong. It feels like something needs to be fixed immediately. But the truth is, people don't change that quickly. Understanding between people doesn't happen instantly. It builds over time, through small conversations, through misunderstandings, through moments that don't feel important until later. And when we don't have patience, we interrupt that process. We react too early. We judge too quickly. We close off before things have a chance to improve. But when you slow down just a little, something shifts. You stop trying to control how people should be, and you start seeing how they actually are. And that alone creates a lot more space. Space to listen, space to understand, space to not take everything personally. And in that space, things feel lighter because you're no longer trying to force change. You're allowing time to do what it naturally does. Maybe patience isn't really about waiting. Maybe it's about how you behave while things are still unclear. Because waiting is unavoidable. You'll always be waiting for something, a result, a reply, an answer, a moment where things finally make sense. But what really matters is what you do during that time. Let me give you a very simple situation. You write an email and you're a bit frustrated. Maybe something didn't go as expected. Maybe someone made a mistake. And you feel that urge to reply immediately, to explain, to correct, to make your point very clear. So you write it, and in that moment, it feels right. But instead of sending it, you pause, just for a few minutes. You step away, and when you come back, you read it again, and suddenly you notice the tone. It feels a bit sharp, a bit emotional, a bit heavier than it needs to be. So you change a few words. You soften the message. You make it clearer, but calmer. Same situation, different outcome. And the only difference was that small pause. That's patience. Not something big, not something dramatic, just a moment where you choose not to react immediately. And that moment is more powerful than it looks because it gives you control, not over the situation, but over your response. And when you have that, everything feels different. You don't need to change everything at once. You can start very small. Maybe today you just delay one reaction. When you feel the urge to check your phone, wait a little longer. When you want to reply immediately, pause for a few seconds. When something feels urgent, ask yourself, does this really need to happen right now? And that's it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to notice. Because patience is not something you suddenly have. It's something you practice in small moments, again and again. And over time, those small pauses start to change how you experience everything. If you think about everything we talked about today, it all comes back to something very simple. Not everything in your life needs your immediate action. Some things just need time. Time for emotions to settle, time for situations to unfold, time for people to understand, time for results to appear. And when you try to rush that process, you don't actually make it faster, you just make it heavier, more stressful, more complicated than it needs to be. But when you step back, even just a little, things begin to feel different, clearer, lighter, more manageable. If you remember the story at the beginning, the water didn't become clear because someone worked harder. It became clear because it was left alone. And maybe some parts of your life are like that too. Maybe they don't need more effort. Maybe they just need more time. So the next time you feel that urge to rush, to react, to force something, just pause, take a breath, and give things a little more space. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to wait. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy learning English through real conversations, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. And I'll see you in the next one.